Second half of Mets baseball is back later tonight. Mets versus Reds kicks off. But in this video, we are continuing our Mets trade deadline discussion. And this time talking about probably one of the more likely scenarios for the Mets at this deadline in potentially trading with the Baltimore Orioles, who are bound to be sellers this coming deadline. Before we fully get into this video, talking about potential offensive upgrades, maybe. Please do smash those thumbs up buttons on this channel. Subscribe to the channel as well and comment your thoughts and opinions down below. All the previous Mets trade deadline videos I've released on the channel are going to be linked in the description, so check them out after you watch this video. All right, as per this article to my left from SNY talking about the pros and cons of the Mets potentially trading for Cedric Mullins, center fielder, longtime center fielder of the Baltimore Orioles, who is likely to be dealt as he will be a rental entering unrestricted free agency after the 2025 season. Does this make sense for the New York Mets? Would a move like this be an upgrade at the center field spot over what the Mets already have right now? And before we talk about Cedric Mullins more in depth and the trade outlook, and we have a little bit of a trade package proposal at the very end of this video that I'm very curious to get your thoughts and opinions as the subscribers of this channel on, let's talk about two potential bats and one more potential bat outside of Cedric Mullins, and that is Ryan O'Hearn. Now, of the two names that you see listed on this screen, Cedric Mullins is by far, especially with the needs of this lineup right now for the New York Mets, the more likely candidate to be dealt in a potential deal between the Mets and the Orioles. But Ryan O'Hearn is such a great name that is going to be very intriguing to me where he ends up at this deadline. A lefty bat, all-star for the American League this season, 286 batting average, 11 home runs, an 840 OPS. He's having a tremendous season, and his on-base percentage is approaching 400 at 382. Whichever lineup Ryan O'Hearn goes to, because again, the Orioles are going to be sellers and they're going to be trading off some of these rental pieces like O'Hearn and like Cedric Mullins. But Ryan O'Hearn is the real deal. And so if the Mets had an option, if they were weighing their options, and if it was about lefties versus righties instead of a positional need, as Ryan O'Hearn is primarily considered a DH, then I would go with Ryan O'Hearn. I think everybody would. Because the last couple of seasons' outlook for Cedric Mullins haven't really been all that great. Former All-Star in 2021, but really ever since 2022, Cedric Mullins has not looked the same and that dominant version of himself that we saw back in 2021. But with both of these names, there's a particular characteristic of a potential trade with the Baltimore Orioles that could also be likely depending on the package. And we'll see this in the proposed trade package here as well, because they also have, in addition to bats, they have a couple of relievers that they could sell off as well. And I've talked about one of them on my channel already. Again, I'll link that video in the description down below. Baltimore Orioles closer Felix Bautista could be in a package deal for the right price. Now, Felix Bautista, if you paid attention to that video that I released, is not a rental. He has multiple years of control left on his contract, and therefore he would probably require more of a return alongside either of these rental bats. But that's what would make this trade interesting, this trade scenario between these two teams, because just like we discussed in the blockbuster proposed package with the Diamondbacks, the Mets have the opportunity to address two needs with one trade with the bullpen and the bat. But as you can see with the numbers for Cedric Mullins this season on the left-handed side, 218 batting average, an OPS that's around 715 at 713, 302 on base percentage, which is below league average, 41 RBIs. And the best thing about the numbers here for Cedric Mullins is that he does have 13 home runs. So he's well on his way to a 20-plus home run season, which we haven't seen from him again since the 2021 season when he was an all-star. And he does provide a lot of speed. That is also a part of his game that definitely would fit the mold for the New York Mets here this season, as they are a team that is rejuvenated on the base paths and essentially stealing bases left and right. Even Juan Soto is up to around 12 stolen bases on the season. and Cedric Mullins is at 13, and you could only assume that he's going to be another 20 plus stolen base candidate. Realistically speaking, even though the batting average is at 218 with Mullins and the OPS is not all that great, he could have a 2020 season, 20 home runs and 20 stolen bases, which is a pretty decent accomplishment within itself. But what would the New York Mets really be getting out of Cedric Mullins if they made this deal happen? Is he an upgrade for the Mets? Is he worth making this trade for when you already have Tyrone Taylor and Jeff McNeil as a platoon basis? Would it be worth it to add Cedric Mullins into the equation? And I keep talking about splits because if Cedric Mullins were added to this team, I still don't think he would be the everyday center fielder. I think he'd probably get more bulk playing time than a guy like Tyrone Taylor, but I don't think that he would be the everyday solidified center fielder, and that's because of his split numbers. Reverse splits, might I add, and this is a continuing trend with Mets outfielders. You see it with Jeff McNeil, who's a left-handed bat and does better so far this year versus left-handed pitching than he does versus right-handed pitching. And you also see it with Tyrone Taylor, who is better versus righties as a right-handed bat. You see the same thing here with Cedric Mullins, a lefty that is better versus left-handed pitching, and it's not even close with the numbers at the top of your screen here to my left. But all in all, whether you take a look at the baseball reference page or the baseball savant page, there seems to be a lot that is to be desired from any fan base. That's team is thinking about bringing on Cedric Mullins as an offensive upgrade given some of these metrics and values that we've seen, not only in the first half of this 2025 season, but also the previous seasons before that. And I think the biggest thing that stands out for me right here on this page with the numbers that you see is, first of all, the stolen bases. He had 30 plus last season at 32. He is a consistent threat on the base paths. He is not really on pace to eclipse that 32 stolen base mark, but as we just mentioned in the previous slide, he definitely will be a 20 plus stolen base candidate this season. But even more worrisome for me is a little bit of that strikeout rate that you see here in green and red to my left. He is not known for being a high strikeout guy, and he hasn't been through the majority of his career, posting a very respectable and below league average strikeout rate last season, even given some of the overall numbers at 19.6%. And while I do understand that we only have a half a season sample size in 2025 so far, the strikeout rate is already up this season at over 23%. So that is something to look out for. If the Mets do go ahead and strike a deal with the Orioles for Cedric Mullins, what kind of hitter and what kind of approach at the plate is he going to have? Now, that's not to say the Mets strike a deal for Cedric Mullins and he is rejuvenated, playing for something, playing for a playoff contending team, a World Series contending team, and you get the best production from him with that rejuvenation. But just looking at the trends, that's something that we have to discuss before something like this actually happens. So let's take a look at a proposed trade package, not from myself this time. This is actually via Sports Illustrated. And I think that this is actually, if the Mets are really interested in Cedric Mullins, this is a good trade package to go off of. And it is as such. The Baltimore Orioles would receive the number 17 and number 27 ranked prospects in this Mets farm system. That's Jacob Reimer and Jack Wenninger, pitcher and outfielder slash third baseman, respectively, for Cedric Mullins, center fielder, who could slot in alongside Tyrone Taylor on a platoon basis, and Gregory Soto, lefty reliever fireballer that has a lot of control issues, but has relatively good overall statistics this season, pitching to a 3.75 ERA, just around there. I think it's actually a 3.74, and he has 5 scoreless outings in his last 5 attempts. Now, Gregory Soto is not the reliever that I want in a proposed trade package. As I mentioned earlier in this video, that would be Felix Bautista, but I do think, especially with the Mets needing another lefty, Gregory Soto could definitely fit that bill alongside Brooks Raley coming back in the second half of this season. But if this is the proposed trade package, and I think it's a very good one, very respectable for both teams, and Jacob Reimer, by the way, is a really decent prospect. As I mentioned, third baseman slash outfielder, having a really good season, just got promoted to Double A after posting really solid numbers in high A ball, and he is well on his way through the organization ranks. I think that this is a move where, yes, you are selling yourself short in terms of the bats on the market, especially with the Diamondbacks making Eugenio Suarez available. But getting that bullpen piece, that lefty bullpen piece, would be, for me, the more exciting part of this trade. And I don't want to sell Cedric Mullins short here. The power is something that he can definitely provide more so over Tyrone Taylor. But again, when you take a look at the rotation of center fielders so far this season, whether it's Tyrone Taylor or Jeff McNeil, they could just slot Jeff McNeil in at center field, depending on what they do in the infield between Mauricio, Beatty, etc. So let me know, Mets fans, what do you think about this proposed trade package? What do you think about Cedric Mullins and that addition, hypothetical addition to this team overall? In the comment section down below, check out all the previous content. Hit those thumbs ups on this video. You can guarantee that this is not going to be the last trade deadline discussion surrounding the New York Mets on this channel. So if you want more trade deadline talks, you know what to do. Subscribe to the channel. Peace.